It was probably my second or third audition of the day. And he was not having life. I was not having life. And he looked at me after I read and said, I don't think you're right for this part because this character has a really big heart. And I literally looked at him and I said, what are you doing in New York then?
Please welcome to the stage, Holly Marie Combs. Have a microphone? There's some water there for you if you need anything.
Might need that. Hi, everybody. Hi. Thank you for coming. Otherwise, I'd just be talking to myself. Thank you. Sometimes it helps. I agree. Turn my phone off.
Very nice. Thank you.
The only time I turn my phone off is my children still don't understand that I work for a living. They don't think it's work. Thank you. Is it warm enough in here for you guys?
A little bit.
I don't want to get naked, but I might. It's a family show after all.
Yeah.
That's what she said.
So needless, I'll get that later. Don't worry, I'll get that. Oh, thank you.
It's going swimmingly.
So I know this is, we're going to take some questions from the audience, but I just have a few softball questions for you. I know you hear this a lot, but you got started acting at a very young age. How did that come about?
Oh, my mom was...
If you could hold the mic a little closer,
Sure.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
My mom had aspirations of being an actress, but she didn't really necessarily have the personality to go with it. She was very sensitive. Every time she got told no, or that she wasn't tall enough, or she wasn't thin enough, it really kind of stung. Whereas with me as a child, it's easier to shrug it off, I guess. And I didn't have a mortgage to pay, so there's a little less pressure at that time. But yeah, so she tried. She was a model for a minute. Like I said, she wasn't tall enough. And so she kind of got me into it. We moved to New York to do such things. And often we couldn't afford a babysitter for me. And she was young. So we're kind of like siblings. We kind of grew up together. And she said, at one point she's like, I don't understand. It's not working. And I said, well, maybe you should have done this. Maybe you should have dressed differently. Maybe you should have dressed the part, which I never did. So whatever. But, and she said to me, because we're like siblings, well, if you think it's so easy, maybe you should try it. And, I was 10 years old, and I was like, sure, watch me go. Now, this is her version of the story. I am too young to remember this conversation, so I just have to take her word for it. But yeah, that's how it started and how it ended. And at one point, we were both extras on a movie, actually. And they could only give one person a SAG card. And she claims she bequeathed it to me. So clearly, I owe her everything. Clearly, still.
Do you remember the first audition you passed?
Yeah, I did everything. I started as an extra. I did print ads. So I did like a print ad for, I swear to God, it must have been the first Apple computer. Like Energizer batteries, I did a print ad for. I did a commercial for Wendy's. Stranger Than Strange, I did a commercial for Purina Dog Chow. Stranger More. And then the first movie I got was Sweetheart's Dance when I was 13. So, yeah, it's taken a while. It's been a long road.
So your first breakthrough role was Kimberly Brock on Picket Fences. What was the auditioning like for that? And what was it like adapting to the schedule of a weekly television show?
Ooh, that was a rough audition. It was rough. Because it was David Kelly's first show independently that he created. And he had come off LA Law, so he was highly anticipated. And I was still living in New York. I think I was 18. Yes, 18. And he was having a bad day. His dog of very many years had died that day, so he was not interested in basically meeting people at all. I had just come off the subway, and pilot season in New York is, at that time, there is no pilot season anymore. But pilot season was when you auditioned for all the new shows happening that year. And it usually happened at a certain time of year. Now, with cable, it happens all the time. But so pilot season is nutty at that time and day. And I probably was auditioning for 3 or 4 shows a day. And, I got to get out of class. I didn't have to go to school. So I was like, cool, see ya, bye. But, it was a hustle to get to all of these auditions and do them well. So I came off the subway in a huff, and it was probably my 2nd or 3rd audition of the day. And he was not having life. I was not having life. And he looked at me after I read and said, I don't think you're right for this part because this character has a really big heart. And I literally looked at him and I said, what are you doing in New York then? Okay? And that was it. That was our first meeting. And then a couple weeks later, my agent called me and said, so, David would like to meet you in LA. And I said, for what? And she said, well, it's a really great pilot. You should consider it. You should. And I am just full of attitude at this age. And I was like, I don't know. Let me think about it. But I did end up going. And I walked into the office, his office, which is quite fancy on the Fox lot, because he is the golden boy. He still is. And he goes, you should be flattered. I said, I should be flattered? Let me know when I'm about to feel flattered. And he goes, because I made the character more like you. And I was like, wah. Okay, I'm a little bit flattered. So, yeah, long and rocky, longest audition process of my life. It spanned the entire USA.
And as far as like adapting to a weekly television show, what was that like?
Well, again, 18-year-old me. So I went from skipping classes to do auditions in New York to having a full-time job that had very strange hours. So sometimes I would have to get up at 5 a.m. Sometimes I would be on set at midnight. So it was a lot of responsibility for me at the time. And like I said, there were definitely some days I showed up late. But it was such a great training ground for me because it was all famous movie actors who were terribly intimidating. And I think it was great for me at the time because it really humbled me to the point of going, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. And that transition from being like the cute kid actor to like just having to smile and just having to sell hamburgers to having some real controversial, serious subject matter was like, okay, well, I had to decide if I was going to be good at this or not, or I was going to have to go to college real quick, and I was not going to go to college.
And then you portrayed Piper and Charmed for the entire series and went on to be a show producer.
I did.
How did that role change for you as far as going into the show production?
For me personally, it didn't change a lot because basically Shannon had raised me to have very many opinions and to let them be known. And so we were always kind of, not like we felt like we were producing, but we felt like we were invested and just wanted it to be good. And by virtue of that, we were producing without knowing we were producing. So at the time I became a producer, my daily life didn't change all that much. They just had to, when they looked at me, they had to pretend they were listening instead of like not pretending to listen. Yeah.
When did you think the show was going to be a success? And what arc of the show did you really think, this is really something?
Well, we never really banked on it. We never really knew it was a sure thing because I think the network kept us guessing. The network kept us sort of in this loop of we might be picked up or we might not. It was only the first year that we were picked up for a bunch of episodes, and Spelling had said that was the first time it had happened, Aaron said, in his career, where a pickup had come so early. But after that, they made us work for it. After that, it was a struggle. After that, it was suspense and not fun.
So you've done a bit more TV than movies. Do you prefer one to the other?
Well, movies, you definitely have more time. So like with, I did probably less than 2 minutes on Born on the 4th of July with Tom Cruise and Oliver Stone. And literally we had 2 days to shoot that. We had 2 days to like shoot 2 scenes. Whereas like 2 scenes, you have to be done with that before lunch on a TV show. So they're 2 very different animals.
Do you prefer one than the other?
Well, I think I've done so much TV, and I know it sounds odd, but I don't want to hear myself talk that much. So I was like, let's just get through it. Let's get done. Let's go. But to have 2 days to think about 2 scenes, no. I mean, I would come up with so many different ways to do it just out of boredom. I'd be like, ooh, let's try this again. I mean, it's almost like a luxury. Yeah, but not necessary.
We're going to get to audience questions in just a second. Another long-running series you were with was Pretty Little Liars. Mm-hmm. How was that experience on that show compared to the other 2 long-running shows?
Well, on the Pretty Little Liars, the girls did all the hard work. And I just got to visit sometimes. I'd be like, hey, peace out. Okay, gotta go. And it was kind of cool because, they both came at the right time in my life. When I started Charmed, I was 25. And when I started Pretty Little Liars, I had just had my 3rd son. And so I wanted, I had dedicated to be home with him for a full year. They called at 11 months, and I was like, I'll go. I'll do it. I almost made it, though. But yeah, so it gave me the time to be there with my sons when they really needed me to be. But at the same time, Finley was born when I did Charmed, and the cast and the crew were really welcoming. And, I was the first one that had a baby on the set. And so he was basically raised by the set for the first 2 years. So I was lucky to be able that they both timed out right in my life. They really did. Yeah. All
right, let's get some of the questions from the audience. Just raise your hand. Kyle will come along. We have a question right down here.
Hi, I wanted to know if you had a favorite episode of Charmed that you had filmed.
Well, I always say my favorite is the Excalibur one, Sword in the City, because that was the only time they gave me a weapon. I mean, I get so jealous of everybody always doing all these fight scenes, and I'm handing it off all the time. And my hands do big things, but not with big things. And that sounds weird, but it's true. Sometimes you need some action.
And a question right down front.
Hi, I do have a question. When Piper's powers essentially stop freezing and are able to explode things, was that like, did it like explode like on set? Like, did they time it? Or?
Sometimes. Usually it was visual effects though. And so that was hard because I couldn't see it and I wouldn't know what it looked like until I saw the episode. So they could describe it all they wanted, but you're just like, okay, sure. And, sometimes we did, and that was fun. But, then that's also costly, and, sometimes it went wrong. So the visual effects were more reliable, for sure.
Okay, next question.
I was wondering, now, out of your movies, Dr. Giggles is my absolute favorite. But story-wise, what was your favorite movie that you did?
Oh, goodness. That's tough. That was a fun movie. And I was 19, and I felt like, this was before Scream, by the way, so this was not socially acceptable to laugh at people dying. Which, it was just, again, ahead of its time, just like Picket Fences. But what was interesting about that movie is that the director was the writer, and his dad was a heart surgeon. So there was a whole bunch of weird stuff wrapped up for him in it, which I appreciated, his vision and putting me kind of in the forefront of it. I had a tendency to do a lot of movies that were based on true stories, and so that's always hard, especially the Texas cadet murder. That was hard, and we're still hoping she doesn't get out of jail because I'm going to need to be in some actor protection program when that happens. But yeah, my kids are all teenagers now, and I have a feeling that maybe I have one more show, one more movie in me that I hope to be my favorite. I'm supposed to be writing something for the last like 10 years. But as I said, all my kids are teenagers. So everything's kind of on the back burner until the last one tells me he doesn't want to hang out with me anymore, which is soon. He's 14. It's going to happen any day now.
Okay, back there.
Hello. So everybody is always talking about like they want to love like Meredith and McDreamy. I always wanted Leo and Piper. Okay,
A little more stable. I mean, a little.
Yeah, you guys went through so much. Now, my question is, if we took away the magical powers, do you think Leo and Piper would have made it?
I think so, only because his powers made him very annoying. Like, he'd just orb out whenever he felt like it. Like, that's like your husband leaving the room every time you try to tell him something, which is actually, that's very true to life anyway. My husband has entered the phase where he doesn't remember anything I say. So now I text it so that I can screenshot it and send it back to him and be like, I did tell you. And yeah, I mean, he healed, yes, but then he was often not available to heal the right things. Like for the podcast, I rewatched one episode where Phoebe has a broken ankle the entire dang time. And I'm like, why are we not healing this? Why is she limping around still 40 minutes later? So, yeah, his powers were problematic. Mine were not. I could freeze him when I wanted to or needed to, and I could blow him up if I needed to.
Okay, next.
Hi, so my question is about the dynamic between the sisters in the show. I know that you kind of acted as a mediator between them throughout the series. Do you have any insight onto kind of how you and the other actresses form those kind of roles and relationships?
Well, I don't have sisters, so this was a whole new ball game for me. Alyssa and Shannon both have brothers, so they had sibling experience to draw upon. I did not. So this was all new territory for me, and to this day still is. But I think, our chemistry is just something that happened naturally. It's just not something, I had a chemistry read once with an actor, and I just don't think you can tell that when in one room for 2 or 3 scenes if it's going to work or not. So it's always a gamble. And it was especially a very big gamble when we introduced Rose, because that depended on you all believing, we had a long-lost sister, and also on the chemistry being right. And thankfully, because it was Rose, and she's so individual, and she doesn't care if she fits in, that it worked out well. But that was just a minor miracle. That's all by chance. Yeah.
And there's a question right there.
Yeah.
When a long series ends, do you get sad, or are you like, oh, that's an end of a chapter and I'm glad to move on?
I was terribly sad, but I had a lot invested in the show. I had spent the last half of my 20s there. I had met, the father of my kids there, and Finley was raised there. So it was very much like a family to me. Like, I bred with one of them, so it was very much a family to me. And, his crew became my crew, and their wives became part of my life. So, it was heartbreaking in many ways. And it was such a rocky, weird thing. It was the WB becoming the CW. So I wasn't done doing it. The girls wanted to move on to bigger and better things, so they were not as sad. And funnily enough, it was Alyssa who was crying the last day. And I was like, what are you doing? Why are you crying? Like, you should be, what? And she was like, it's just closure. And I was like, okay, yes, it is. But yeah, it's especially, like you said, like TV schedules are 9 months out of the year, 5 days a week, at least 12 hours a day. And you miss a lot of things. You miss a lot of, family events. You miss a lot of birthdays. You miss a lot of weddings. Your friends may or may not still like you. And, so going back to a normal life is why, the highs are so high and the lows are so low. And many actors, like musicians coming off the road, don't know how to navigate a normal daily life because it's just so bizarre for so long. So it was sad. It was absolutely sad.
Do you keep in touch with any cast members from any of the three
Lord
shows?
have mercy, all of them. I think one is pregnant right now. One is doing great. It's a big dysfunctional family, to say the least. And it's like, I say when we do these things, like the circus is coming to town, because we are just like carnies. We're all just trying to catch up with each other as we travel around. But it is. It's great. It's a great band of gypsies, basically.
You see each other at other Comic-Cons?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah, I heard Rose is here somewhere.
Yes.
She's just in the other building.
The other building. All right. Next question, please.
Hi, Holly. Thanks for joining us here in Monroeville this weekend. Did you get to keep anything from souvenirs from any of the TV show or movie sets you were on?
I have a lot of Piper clothes. I am not sure what to do with them, but she can't live in my closet anymore. She takes up too much room, so I don't know what to do with her leather pants. You want them? Okay, cool. Noted. Yeah. I have the kimono, which I think is, I don't know what to do with that, but it should be something. And the littlest, tiniest heels I've ever seen in my life. I don't know who wore them, but supposedly I did. I was like, these are little like Cinderella shoes. They're like this big, but they're awfully cute. Clearly I don't wear those anymore.
Okay. There.
Is it hard for you to do like emotional scenes like when Leo dies or anything like that?
No, apparently that was my forte. And when they found out I could cry, I seemed to cry a lot. I was like, wait a minute. But it can be taxing because I don't want to fake it. I'm not one of those actors. I don't know if you know, but a lot of actors will have menthol fume sprayed in their eyes, and it makes you tear. It's painful. So that makes them have the pain face. But I don't know. I could never do it. I've done some movies that were very cathartic for me, and they came at the right time in my life, so I could cry easily at that time. But no, I feel like if you're trying to have an emotional connection, whether it's being funny or serious or convincing or emotional in a scene, that you should actually try to connect with the audience. And that takes real human emotions and real human beliefs, and I think that's the job. Thankfully, I'm broken enough to do it. Just kidding. I'm totally fine.
Aww. Cal, you have a question?
Actually, I have a quick question.
All right.
Is there a scene that you can recall in pretty much any of your productions that was very difficult to get to just because people were cracking you up or you were cracking up other people?
Yeah.
Can you relate one of those?
Oh, sure. Julian was always impossible to do scenes with. I mean, just give any given scene. He was joking around. I think, Spelling allowed very little outtakes to be released because in his day and age, he wanted us to be glamorous. He didn't want us to be seen as making mistakes ever. So he was very against releasing bloopers, which I was like, it was my argument all the time. That's the funniest part of the show. Honestly, they're the funniest part of the show. And any gag reel that we had starred Julian. It was all Julian, 80% of the tape, because he was just so funny and just loved apparently being there. And then Nolan North on Pretty Little Liars is, I'm glad I only had like 1 or 2 scenes with him because he is the same. He is made of the same ilk. He is, impossible to do scenes with. But there are those actors that are just showmen and they can't turn it off. Can't. But it makes it fun. Makes it more interesting.
That's awesome.
Also makes it take a lot longer.
We have someone. Did you have a question with some light reading here?
She's like, I've been to 3 of her panels. She says the same thing every time.
She remembers me. I'm also putting my name in the hat for the Coyote Piper outfit because I've been looking online for that.
We have her. We have her.
What direction would you have seen the show going if Constance stayed?
Yeah. See, I think it would have been more sisterly, obviously, because she wrote it about her sisters. So these were also real life people that she had a very strong connection to her and the characters. There would have been a lot less half shirts, I'm guessing. Yeah, I mean, it got to the point where, they were trying to figure out how to make the show more popular, and the outfits became smaller and smaller, and which is why it's still shown every day in every gym in America with the sound off. It's fine. I don't care. It works. But yeah, I think it would have been more sisterly, and I think it would have spanned the generations. I think it would have been more what the girls went off to do, and jobs and careers and families and that sort of thing, without it being like trying to make it PC. I think it would have been more about family.
Hi. I was wondering the actor that played Wyatt, not as an infant, obviously, but was he as quiet on set as he was in the show? And why do you think they had him speak so little?
Wes, did he speak?
Not a lot. Like maybe a word here and there.
Was he trying to be mysterious? Yeah. I mean, well, he is a poet. He is a poet, and I think they just didn't know what direction they wanted to go with the kids. Like, do we make them a villain? Do they make them like tempestuous teenagers like mine? Do we, embrace them and they're perfect or better than their parents? I just don't think they knew what to do with him at the time. But yeah, Wes is kind of brooding anyway. So it tracks.
Question right there.
Hi. So you mentioned a podcast earlier. Could you tell us more about that?
I can. BK, and who more widely known as Leo, and Drew, who played Chris, and I were doing a rewatch podcast of the show, and so we just finished season 2. And there's a bunch of people who are upset that we haven't released more episodes, but we're not allowed to at the moment because we're working on a deal with a bigger company to do the podcast. So I hope it won't be upsetting to a lot of people, but we're going to have to start from the beginning again. But it's bigger and it's better. And I'm, again, going to have to figure out something else to say.
Got time for a few more questions?
I know we touched on this briefly, but the wardrobe from Charmed has played a significant influence in fashion in the 90s and 2000s and now. My question for you is there any pieces that you really enjoyed wearing?
Well, I don't know how I'm going to give up the future Piper corset thingy, but I need to. Because every time I look at it, I was like, this is sad. You need to let this go. You need to let it go. I'm like, but it's so cool. No, you need to let it go. But it'll go to a good cause. I think I'm going to auction them off and, give the proceeds to charities. And, yeah, she needs a new home. Yeah, it's time. What is it, like 30 years later? But I do like that one.
And let's get a couple more. You're going to be headed back to your table to sign, am I correct, or photo op?
Yes.
Okay, good.
I don't think photo ops until 5.
That's right, yeah.
Don't quote me.
She'll be headed back to her table.
Hi. The club got you musical acts. So which one was your favorite?
It's a toss-up, but between the Cranberries and Pat Benatar, yeah, those two are my favorite. Paula Cole was lovely and gracious. We had the Goo Goo Dolls. We had Bare Naked Ladies. I mean, there's so many to choose from. We got super lucky, and that was another Aaron Spelling thing. He just wanted to integrate so much, interest in anything that was popular of the day, and it was a great formula. And I was glad I got to be the one that owned it, even though apparently my sisters owned some of it. But I was doing all the work.
Okay. And one last question, possibly. Right here.
Hello.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm all right.
All right. So, I don't know if anyone asked you just today, but
Did you get here late?
A little bit.
All right.
So I had to come see you. You my
Were
girl.
you in Rose's line?
Her line was cut off, but I was definitely coming to see my boo.
She was supposed to be here, but her line was too long.
I know. I'm sorry, but you were the reason why I'm here today.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
So, you have a very strong leader role in Charmed, like take charge. Hey, the attitude is very strong. Was that something the writers wanted you to have, or was that something you developed? Because I loved it.
Oh, gosh.
I call it the thug mentality.
There you go.
I don't know. I think it was a combination of both. I don't know if she definitely wasn't meant to be that in the beginning. And I think she kind of reluctantly, I hate when actors says she, but I kind of reluctantly stepped into those shoes, and Piper did too. And so I want to think it happened organically for both of us. And it was also growing up and going through a lot of stuff, and we both did, and that's how she ended up. Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming out and doing this. She's headed back to her table to sign. Give it up. Holly Marie Combs, thank you, dear.
Thank you.